Right, guys, so just to kick off, so I sent on the mock exam to you. So look, we'd be here all day if we were going to go through the MCQs. So I suppose the first hint or tip that I'm going to give you is you've got 2 weeks until the exam now. So the first section on the paper is obviously your 50 multiple choice questions. The way I would go about preparing for those is I would reread all 4 modules again. And I'm not saying sit down and memorize. I'm just saying reread, remind yourself of the content in each of those modules, and the MCQ side of things, that should be more than enough in terms of preparing. Now, the section of the paper that I'm going to go through today are the long questions at the end. So again, just to reiterate a couple of things that Declan said, the first thing, I remember doing my leaving cert, and every teacher always said, read the questions carefully. I cannot emphasize that enough. Read the question carefully, break it down into the components, and make sure you answer every part of the question. Okay, so if it takes reading the question 3 or 4 times, take the time to do that. So in terms of the mock paper, and I'm assuming that you all have the mock paper in front of you at the moment, the first question that I'm going to take a run through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a high level structure on how to answer these long questions. And then you take that structure and you apply that to exam day then. And I'm also going to give you some good hints and tips in terms of where to focus your efforts and where to focus your time before the exam. So the first question, the first long question on the mock paper is write a collection letter or a collection email to send to your customers. Explain in detail each element of the letter and how it relates to the guidelines as set out in the notes. Please specify if it is a letter or an email that you've written. So we are not, in this particular question, the first thing to say is we're not looking specifically only for the letter. We are looking for an explanation of that letter. Okay, so this goes back to what Declan says. Copying and pasting will not work in this instance. Your understanding, it's not in our interest to have people regurgitating information back to us. We are testing your understanding of the information and your application of that knowledge. Okay, so in terms of how you will approach this question, first of all, this section of learning is in module 2. Okay, so module 2, you'll see, gets mentioned an awful lot. So I would concentrate, try and focus on module 2, and more to come in relation to that a little bit later. So explaining the elements of the letter. So first of all, specify, is it a letter or an email that you're going to send? Depending on where you work at the moment and depending on what it is that you do, some of you may send a lot more letters and some of you may send emails. So just specify for me so that I know what it is that I'm actually reading when the exam comes back to me. What will give you extra marks on this question is giving me a little bit of context. So context around the background. Now, this can be imaginary background, okay? You can make this stuff up or you can use a real life example. But give me a little bit of context in terms of why this letter or this email is going to the customer. So why is it going? Are they overdue? Have they not, is the account overdue? Have payments bounced? Give me that little bit of context so that I can actually see the full picture in terms of why that letter has been sent. So in terms of the letter itself, there should be 3 paragraphs only. These are the overall guidelines for a letter. There should be 3 paragraphs only, 2 sentences per paragraph, and 10 words in a sentence. Now, you are not going to lose marks if you have 11 words in a sentence. We're not that rigid, but these are your overall guidelines in terms of what you should be sticking to when you're putting your letter together. So think of it high level. So paragraph 1 needs to cover fact, okay? What's owed, when it became due, what's overdue, the facts of the matter. So there's €1,000 owed on the account. It was due on such and such a date. It's now overdue by X amount of time. Okay. Paragraph 2 specifies a call to action. So you've laid down the facts. You've laid down what the situation is with the customer. Now you need a strong call to action. So your call to action really should be, we want X amount of money on our account by such and such a date. This is the call to action. So I would avoid putting anything in there like, can you try and get payment processed? That's quite wishy-washy, airy-fairy. You need to lay down exactly what it is that you want from that customer. So we require this money to be on our account by such and such a date. Then paragraph 3 should include a compelling reason to complete the request. So would it be loss of service? Would it be interest accruing? Whatever that compelling reason is, you need to motivate that customer to complete the action that you've laid out in the call to action. Okay, I'm going to share my screen because I have an example letter here that I want to show you. You just bear with me a moment. Can everybody see that? Can everybody see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So look, this is, I can send you this, I can email this example letter to you after the session. There's no problem with that at all, but this is literally a reflection of what I've just gone through. So dear Mr. Dilly, I should have mentioned at the beginning, make sure you are addressing this letter to the correct person. That is first and foremost, and kind of goes without saying. Make sure that you are addressing it to the correct person and to a person, not to the accounts department or whatever. You know, you need to get the name of the person who essentially holds the purse strings, so that you're addressing the correct person on the letter. Your Woodlawn estate management fees were due 2 weeks ago. Your current balance is €1,000 and needs immediate payment. That is you laying out the facts. Okay, those facts, and again, guys, make sure your facts are correct. Like, this is on a day-to-day basis in collections. You're going to do nothing for your case if you have incorrect information. So you make sure you're completely on the ball, that your accounts are up to date, that your payments are allocated, and the information you're putting into the letter or the email is correct. Okay. Now, the next section is call to action. Please settle your account fully by bank transfer. Details below. Payment needs to reach our bank by Friday, May 13th. So you put in a call to action there where there's absolutely no ambiguity. The customer can read those sentences and knows straight away what they need to do. Then your compelling reason to pay. Failure to receive payment by this date will result in your service being suspended immediately. My direct line is should you wish to contact me. So you can see it's 3 paragraphs. I didn't even count the words in the sentence now, guys, but the sentences are short and to the point. You've laid out the facts. You've put in the call to action, what you want from that customer, and you have put in a compelling reason to pay. So that's how your letter should look. Now, if we refer back to the question, you're writing a collection letter or a collection email to send to your customers. Explain in detail each element of the letter and how it relates to the guidelines as set out of the note, as set out in the notes. So you need to put the letter in, but you need to explain why the letter is laid out like that. So just what I've said, you're laying out the facts, so there's no ambiguity over the case. You're putting in a call to action from that customer. What does that customer need to do? Very, very clearly. And you're putting in a compelling reason to pay. So why should they actually comply with your request? In terms of an email is very, very similar nowadays. Again, make sure you're sending it to the correct person. And an email with this sort of wording is not going to be strong if you're sending it on to a generic accounts team. You know, you need to speak to a person. It's no harm to put in red receipts. You know, some people, you know, obviously they don't have to complete the red receipt if they don't want to, but it certainly doesn't do any harm to do so. And then you're making sure that you're writing, as I said, to the person and not to the company. So the email is the very same in terms of layout. Put in your 3 paragraphs, put in laying out the facts, put in your call to action as your second paragraph, and then the third paragraph is your compelling reason to pay. So why should this customer comply with your request? So in terms of answering that question, that's the kind of structure that you should follow. Explain the elements, take care of the appropriate person, make sure there's no spelling mistakes. You know, that's really simple stuff that people tend to forget. The guidelines, your 3 paragraphs, 2 sentences per paragraph, roughly 10 words per sentence. Make sure it's looking, you know, there's no spelling mistakes, that it's professional. And you need to make sure that on the exam itself, are you writing a letter that you're going to send in the post, or are you writing an email? They're essentially the same type of thing, but just for my own marking, I would like to know whether you're doing a letter or an email. That is how you would answer question 1 on the mock paper.
Sorry, Katrina, hi.
Yes, hi, Nabila.
Hi, how are you? Just related to this question, the answer would be in 2 parts then, either writing an email or a letter, and then the second part is specify each part, yeah?
Yes, exactly. So
yeah.
you're going to choose one. So it's write a collection letter or a collection email. So choose
Mm-hmm.
one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you email more so in your job, I would choose to do an email. The first thing is to write the actual email following those guidelines, and then you explain why you've written the email in that fashion. So there's yes, you're absolutely right. There's 2 parts to that question.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And you're going to be absolutely so tired of me, guys. I'm going to repeat myself 100 times over. Use examples if you can. Okay, so if you've got a real life example that you can base this on, that would be even better. Okay. Okay, so if I'm going to open the floor to any more questions, are you're all happy enough for me to continue on to question 2?
Katrina, I have a question there, please.
Yeah.
I just wondered, is there a kind of a guideline on how many words maybe we should be writing for the explanation part of it?
Now, I'm asked this in every revision session, and to be quite honest with you, if you can, I always take it that from the perspective, if you're able to communicate what you want to say in half a page and it comes across well and you get your point across, I'm fine with that. If you feel you need to write more in order to explain what your point is, then write more. You know, the main thing, and Declan talked about this, is time management. You know, get your point across. Rather than concentrating on how much I'm writing, concentrate on how much time am I spending on the question. And the way that when I actually did the exams was that I allocated probably about 25 minutes to each question, leaving kind of 10 minutes at the end just to go back and reread it. Because if you answer, we'll say question 1, and then you go and answer question 4. Question 4 could spark something that you were missing from question 1, but you know, it means that you've allocated kind of 10 minutes to go through your answers, reread them to yourself, and think about me in my position. Does this make sense? Is what I'm trying to say coming across? I know that's a very airy-fairy answer to your question now, but I hope that's you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So question 2, guys, is give examples of good and bad words and good and bad questions. Okay, now that's an and, not an or. So there's straight away you've got 2 parts to that question. Explain in your own words the reasons for your answers. You were encouraged to give examples of words and questions that are not included in the notes. Now, this is a day-to-day thing that you do all the time, guys. You are always monitoring the language that you're using on the phones with customers. Okay, so this shouldn't be difficult. It's what you do on a day-to-day basis. So the whole thing, let's talk about, you know, good and bad words to start with. So one of the unholy words in credit collections is chasing. I'm chasing payment, and straight away you've started your phone call off on a quite a negative note. No, you're collecting payment. Okay, you're making sure that the account is staying within terms. You're not talking about overdue accounts, bad debts, delinquency, arrears. These are all words that we use in credit collections, and they all have a kind of a negative connotation. So the long and short answer to this question, guys, is trying to get into that positive mindset, and that the language and the words that you're using are of a positive nature, because if you put out positivity, it should come back to you. And that's what we want to try and get through. So if you put out positive words and positive questions, that would help to get a positive response from the client. So in other words, you're going to collect what's owed. So examples in your notes. So I think a really good exercise between now and over the next 2 weeks, and I'm sure, you know, most of you are working, on a day-to-day basis, like when you're at work, make a note of the calls that you've done. Have those examples, and you can have those beside you when you're doing the exam. You know, you can have all of this prep work done coming into the exam, and it's all going to arm you to be able to go in and answer these questions in a really, really professional way with really good examples. So for the next 2 weeks, I would challenge you, the calls that you're doing, think about the language that you're using. Are you using positive language, or are you using negative language? Are you asking customers to pay because they're overdue? Straight away, you've put that negative connotation. No, I'm Mr. Customer, I would like you to pay because I want to keep you within terms. You're doing them a favor. So it's all about the language that you use. So there's words like the word but. But is a bad word. You know, you did a great job, but it already puts a negative spin on what you're about to say. Try and make payment. No, that's not, we're not going to try, we're going to do it. Usually something happens. Usually customers will pay within terms. So in other words, you've basically said that some don't. So, you know, these are the types of, it whittles down the importance of what, you know, I'm just trying to arrange payment. That it dilutes the message and takes from what you're actually trying to do. So, as I said, have a think about the calls that you're doing over the next 2 weeks between now and exam day. And there's nothing to stop you from doing an awful lot of prep work around this and having some notes about calls, certain calls where you use language, and you know, where you could improve yourselves. So it says, explain in your own words the reasons for your answers. So, you know, if you give examples of a call where maybe you were in a bad mood and you used that negative language and you got a negative outcome from the customer, that is as good a learning for any of us as being able to give me an example of a fantastic call that you were positive throughout and you got a positive outcome. We learn more from our errors than we do from doing something right. So, you know, other phrases maybe to avoid. Sorry to bother you. No, I'm not sorry. I'm making this phone call for a very good reason. There's money owed and my job is to collect that money. So sorry to bother you. And Paul Daly did a great revision session on this, and he said, you know, somebody starts an email or starts a call with sorry to bother you, it reminds me that I'm bothered. So straight away you've put across, I'm going to annoy you now. So, you know, try not to use that. Don't be apologetic for what it is that we're doing. Another line as well, I'm afraid we haven't received payment. I'm afraid we haven't received payment. That's not down to you. No, we haven't received payment. Okay, so avoid anything that's kind of wishy-washy, which dilutes the message or dilutes the task that you're trying to do, which is to collect money. In terms of how you would have, you know, good and bad questions, try and think of it in terms of open questions versus closed questions. So what you need to do on every call, bar, you know, the end result of collecting what it is that you're looking to collect, is you want to get somebody talking. And when you get somebody engaged and talking to you, that happens through open questions. So, you know, you start off with your open questions, things like, you know, what's the plan to get this sorted out? What's the plan? How do we resolve this? What would it take to arrange payment? What would it take to get the arrears cleared? What would it take? And, you know, leave the questions very open and you get that customer talking. And then as the call develops, what you're going to do is you're going to move further and further to closed questions. So, Mr. Customer, so what we've agreed is you will pay X amount on such and such a date. Is that correct? And that's a closed question. That's yes or no. So don't focus on whys, you know, why payment hasn't been made. That's all in the past. You're focusing on today and going forward. So as I said, you start off with your open questions, you get your customer talking, you get them engaged with you, and then as you carry the conversation to a close, you make sure then that the questions you pose to that pose to that customer are closed questions where there's an agreement, and then at the end of the call you summarize the agreement. So that's question 2. Question 2, as I said, good and bad words. You can make a note as well. All of that stuff around good and bad words, good and bad questions is also in module 2. Okay. Any questions from anybody at this stage? We're all good to go on number 3. I hope I'm not going too fast. When you're not actually standing and physically in front of people, it's difficult to know if they're with you, but I'm hoping you are. So question 3 is, explain the importance of listening and the steps you can take to improve this aspect in your calls. Please use examples that you've experienced or witnessed in your working life. So you're starting to see a pattern here, guys. Look, you're asked for examples on practically every question. You can have those examples already done between now and exam day. You can take all of that stress, you know, trying to think up scenarios, trying to think up different calls and situations, take them from your everyday working life, you know? So in terms of this question, so explain the listening and the steps to improve this. I think we could all use this module in our day-to-day lives. I know me, definitely. The important thing is that you're going to hear what your customer is saying. And then from that, you're going to listen for keywords and you're going to listen for phrases. And hopefully you can kind of judge what type of personality your customer has and adapt to that customer. So there's 3 different types of customers. There's customers that can't pay, there's customers that won't pay, and there's customers that shouldn't pay. Okay, so you're going to draw out signals from your customer, get all the facts, and then you're going to propose a solution. So active listening, you know, explain why it's important. Well, it's fairly self-explanatory in terms of why it's important, because you need to know your customer, you need to ascertain the facts, and then you need to propose a solution in order to collect. So active listening is super, super important. Giving them time and space. So you're going to pose your questions. How are we going to resolve this? Again, a very open question. Then you remain silent. You hand it over to the customer to actually propose their solution. You give them the time and space, you take what they've said, and then you check that you've understood that correctly. So, Mr. Customer, what I've understood from what you've said is that you are in a position where you can pay half today and half at the end of the week. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly? So you're going to constantly look for confirmation from that customer that you're understanding what they're communicating to you. So you reiterate what you've understood and get them to confirm that. When you're on these calls, a lot of us, and I'm as guilty as the next person, remove all distractions from around you. Don't try multitasking. You know, I've been in situations where I'm on the phone with one customer and I'm emailing another. You know, give the customer that you're dealing with on the phone 100% of your attention. That's how active listening works. So give them 100% of your focus and make sure that you are, as I said, reiterating and understanding what they said. And only when you understand exactly what they say can you propose a solution and can you propose a payment. So for that question, you know, the active listening section is in, as I said, module 2. You'll find a little bit about it in module 3 as well. And please use examples that you've experienced or witnessed in your working life. You will all have examples. And like I said, if this question was on the real exam, you know, you've got 2 weeks to build a bank of real examples. You know, if you have 2 or 3 calls over the next 2 weeks that you think are good examples of a good collection call or a bad collection call, I guarantee there will be a question on the exam where you'll be able to apply some of those examples. Okay. Now, I'm going to complete question 4, and then I'm going to move on to the real exam, where I'm not going to tell you what the questions are, but I'm certainly going to point you in the right direction. So I'm going to stop and open the floor again, just to check that if there's any questions, or is everyone happy enough to go on to question 4 on the mock exam? Silence is happiness. Okay, good stuff. So the 4th question. What is the best way to deal with a customer who can't pay? Please use examples that you have experienced or witnessed in your working life. So again, there's that old chestnut. Examples of your working life. Again, you know, most of this preparation can be done before you ever sit down, before you ever get the exam. Examples of your calls, examples of your emails where you've applied the collections training. That's going to be invaluable to you on exam day. So dealing with a customer who can't pay, they're going to fit into 2 different categories. It's going to be customers that can't pay in full right now, or customers that can't pay at all. So again, the steps that you're going to take in order to ascertain what type of customer you're dealing with. First of all, you're going to use your active listening. You know, you're going to find, you're going to use your active listening, allow the customer to explain their situation. So you're going to gain the facts, you're going to get the facts around the situation. You're going to empathize with them. Now, we're not monsters, you know, we have emotions, and certainly if there's, it's appropriate, you will empathize with the customer, because, you know, we're all human beings. But, you know, you show the empathy, look, I'm sorry to hear things are tough at the moment, but then you very quickly move on to the facts again, because, you know, you've got a job to do. So the big step that you're going to come to next is in terms of the actual owing. So do you accept that you owe X amount? So you're going to have to get this customer to engage in such a way that they confirm that yes, the debt is 3,000 euros, and yes, they accept that they owe this money. So, you know, you're getting them to engage with you, but you're reconfirming, you're reiterating all the time. And then it's an open question. How do you propose to clear this amount? And this part of the training moves from the can't pay kind of into the negotiation skills. Okay. I will tell you straight away, pay attention to the section on negotiating skills. Okay. Allow them to start the negotiation. So you started the ball rolling by saying, how do you propose to clear the 3,000 euros? Don't reject the first offer. Oh, well, I can only pay 1,000 euros today. Okay, thank you for that. Now, in terms of the remaining 2,000 euros, how are we going to clear that? You're not going to reject their first offer. You're going to accept it, but you're going to then follow up and counter offer with that. So that's how you keep a negotiation going. It's over and back, and it's over and back. So I can pay 1,000 euros today. That would be great, Mr. Customer. How are we going to arrange payment, or how are we going to clear the balance? How do you propose to clear the balance? Well, I'm going to pay 1,000 euros next month, and I suppose I can pay another 1,000 the following month. That would be great. So what you're saying is, if I could just summarize, Mr. Customer, you're going to pay 1,000 euros today, so I can expect to see that on our account tomorrow. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. So that's the first part of the deal, and then the next 2 installments will come over the next 2 months. Terrific. Can you transfer that 1,000 euros today, and then we will arrange a payment of the following 2,000 over the next 2 months, and you verify with that customer throughout the call, so they hang up thinking, right, I'm making a transfer of the 1,000 euros now. So the negotiation, before you make these calls to the customers, so dealing with these customers, you need to have, you know, a kind of a plan in your own head in terms of where you want to get that customer to. It's not always possible when you're taken by surprise, but certainly if you know that this is going to be a tricky customer, preparing for the call and preparing to have a plan and have, you know, a negotiation in your own head certainly will prep you to have a more successful collections call. So what is the best way to deal with a customer that can't pay? So again, examples, guys, you've all come across customers who can't pay. People who've run into troubled times. You know, we've come through the pandemic. That was, you know, a really, really tough time for collectors. So if you think back to those kind of things and think of those types of examples, you should have no problem with dealing with a question around the customers who can't pay, won't pay, or shouldn't pay. So that's the mock exam, guys. So look.
Sorry, Katrina, again.
Yeah.
Hi. Regarding this question, so should we include both examples of the customers who can't pay right now and can't pay, or just in general?
So the question here, I'm relating it back to the module notes, but make sure you keep referring back to the question, because what we find with a lot of people is they do divert off topic. The question is, what is the best way to deal with a customer who can't pay? Okay, there's a whole section on that in module 3. So you make sure that you always refer back to the can't pay scenario. What I'm doing at the moment, I suppose, guys, is I'm trying to guide you in terms of what we're looking at for exam answers, but I'm also trying to keep it quite broad where things will come in as well, because obviously the real exam will be slightly different questions.
Yeah.
But as I said at the beginning of the session, and I'm going to keep saying it, reread the questions. If you would take my advice, allocate your 25 minutes per question and allow you that 10 minutes at the end of the hour to make sure that you have indeed answered the question. That example that Declan gave of the student, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking when you get a student who have absolutely studied from page to page, but they've given you the wrong information on the sheet. It's as simple as that. It's just not reminding themselves. But if you keep reminding yourself and you keep referring back to the question, that will keep you on track.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Now, does anybody else have any other questions for me before I talk about the real exam? I hope this is making you feel better about the exam now, as opposed to anything else. You know, the one thing I would say to you, the collections module is the most common sense module out of the course, because it's what you do. You do this day to day, on a day-to-day basis. You send letters, you email customers, you do calls. There is nothing in this that you don't know. So this is just literally getting everything that's in your heads down on paper and articulating it to myself. Okay, so the real exam, again, it's 4 questions. You only have to do 2. I've written down some bits and pieces here that I wanted to just reiterate to you again. Read the questions carefully. Read and reread the questions. Make sure that if the question has 2 parts, you answer 2 parts. If you only answer 1 part, I can only give you half marks. I want to give you all distinctions. Okay. So breaking down the components of a question, I think, is super important. So, like, to refer back to the mock exam, question 1 on the mock exam, write a collections letter or a collections email. So choose one and send to your customers. That's the first part. Write the email or write the letter. Explain in detail each element of the letter. That's the second part. Okay, explaining the elements of the letter, explaining your paragraphs and how it relates to the guidelines as set out in the notes. So you're going to explain why you've put it in such and such a format, and you're going to explain why it's set out in such and such a format. And then please specify. So that's 3 sections. And then please specify if it's a letter or an email that you've written. So breaking down the question and even putting a little note beside it to say, right, have I answered that part of the question? Tick, yes, I've done that. Have I answered the second part? Tick, yes, I've done that. It makes my job so much easier to give out marks when I can see somebody has really studied the question and made sure that they've answered all parts. So question 1 on the real exam. It comes from module 2. Okay, and I really want you guys to focus, if you're going to answer question 1, focus on positive and negative communication. And that's all in module 2. If you take that section, module 2, bear with me a second, module 2, verbal communications, the right words and the right questions, that if you focus on that area, then you will be able to answer question 1 without any issues. Now, question 2.
Katrina, sorry,
Yes.
You broke up on me there, so I didn't catch what did you say? Like, which part of the module 2 should we?
So there's sections, verbal communications, and then the right words and the right questions. So you're gonna take the sections that pertain to positive and negative communication. So the right words, the wrong words, good words, bad words, that section there. If you know that section well, you will absolutely fly through question 1.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
No problem. Question 2 is covered module 2 and module 3. And it's, you know, if you know your different types of customers, can't pay, won't pay, shouldn't pay. If you've got get a really good understanding of those types of customers fitting into those categories, and what do you do with them? There's a different set of guidelines for each. So if you know that section, we'll fly through question 2. So it's module 2 over to module 3. And there's a very similar question on the mock paper that we've run through as well, guys. So, you know, don't reinvent the wheel. Make sure that you know, go back to your mock paper, go back to your notes. Yeah, I'm trying to stop myself from actually saying the question. Right. Question 3 is in module 3. It is the largest section in module 3. And it's the more general side of communications. So what am I going to say about this? It will look for examples, and it's understanding your customer. And I probably shouldn't say any more. That's probably kind of giving it away now, but no. Make sure you have examples, guys. Examples are key. Now, do you have any questions on any of that so far? I'm just going to give you some hints and tips on the 4th question. Now, take these hints and tips, and I don't know what way you want to study. If you want to study for all 4 sections or all 4 questions and then choose on the day, that's fine. Modules 2 and 3 will you know, are super important. They come up quite a bit. The 4th question is actually covered in module 3 and 4. It is a general high-level question, and it really pulls together all of the learning throughout the collections module. I can't really say much more about it, to be honest, but it's, you know, it really is a breakdown of how you do your day-to-day job. So again, my general notes here: read the questions carefully, reread the question again, break it down into components and refer back to the question as you're answering. Use your examples, okay? Use your examples, and like, you've got ample opportunity for over the next 2 weeks to pull together examples of good calls, bad calls, whatever the case may be. Reread all the modules for the MCQs. Now, this is what I've actually written down for the MCQs. A lot of people say, well, how do I study for that? Because 50 multiple choice questions is a lot. I would actually reread all 4 modules. And as I said at the beginning of the session, don't sit down and try and study them and memorize them. But if you reread it, you've already done this. Reread through the short tests that you completed. Okay, I'm not telling you that those are the questions, but you know that if you have the short tests that you did throughout the term. When you're answering the questions, I want to hear your answers in your own words. Okay, so Claire, to refer back to, you know, what your question was, how many words should I be looking at doing? I want to hear you speak in the exam. So if that is done in half a page or a full page, as long as you get your point across and you answer the questions with supporting examples, you will do absolutely fine. And now, bar sending you the actual exam, I think that's as much as I can say now. And listen, guys, you're all going to do fine. You've kept up. Any students that keep up with the modules, keep up with the short tests, and keep up with the assignments, which you all have done. And I know I have some assignments still to correct and send back to you. So I have gotten them all. I will have them back to you probably by Tuesday of next week. You know, you will do absolutely fine. There's no reason to panic over this at all. This is stuff that you know. And I am obviously here and around for the next 2 weeks. If there's anything that you're struggling with at all, don't hesitate to pick up the phone to me or to send me an email. And now I will, with 4 minutes remaining, I will open the floor to questions.
Sorry, Katrina, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
So for answering the multiple choice questions, is it okay to highlight the answer that you're picking with, you know, with the yellow highlighter and stuff?
Yes, absolutely.
And then, like, for answering the questions, like, so would that be like on a new page rather than underneath the question? Or
do you
how,
mean are you talking about the long questions?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the long question, if for answering them rather than putting them under the question, or do you want them under the question or on a separate page?
So what I would suggest you do, it's going to go over to you in a Word document, I believe, Declan, isn't that right?
Yeah.
So if it's going to go over in a Word document, I would suggest you, if you're going to answer question 1, Leave question 1 there and put your answer, and maybe just
Underneath.
delete off the questions that you're not
Grand.
questions that you're not answering. I will figure it out as long as you've got the question somewhere and the answer there on the same page. I'll
Perfect.
figure it out. So don't panic about that at all.
No, that's just, it was more from, because I was trying to answer the other one, the credit, and I was like, it just seemed really long, and I was like, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
know.
So if
Okay.
you highlight for the MCQs, if you highlight your answer in
Yeah.
yellow or any other color,
Yeah.
and I will know then, and I'll be able to correct them like that, because I generally what I do is I tend to print them off and do it by hand. You
Great.
go absolutely goggle-eyed if you're looking at it.
That's perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions from anybody else?
Something there. Oh yeah, just one other thing as well. You will get the exam in a Word document. So sometimes if you open the file out of the email, it becomes a read-only document. So just make sure, and particularly after you've answered question 1, that you save it somewhere onto your screen, that you haven't worked for nothing, and then send back a blank document. So if it opens as a read-only document, just do a quick file save it on your desktop or whatever, just to keep saving, because the last thing you want to have is techie issues to ruin your morning and the stress levels that goes with that. So that is that.
Declan, sorry,
Yeah.
just to cut across you there, but just one thing that's after occurring to me as well that we did have an example of in the last couple of terms. When you are completing the exam, make sure that don't have, we'll say, your mock exam open at the same time, because we did have a student, do you remember, Declan, sent on the mock exam to us by accident? It just, you end up with so many exams in front of you on the screen. And it was a genuine mistake, but
Yeah.
it just means that make sure you're doing the correct paper.
Yeah, that's great. And also to let you know, in case you think I'm lazy or missing something, when I'm here on the day and you send back your papers, I'll just say, got it. I don't read it, vet it, go through it or whatever. I literally just accept the email, because there's 30, 40 emails coming into me. So I just acknowledge I got the email, and then I forward it on to the tutors for marking. So, I'm not going to pick up if you've missed something. So just in case you're relying on me, I don't actually read the emails at that stage. And just final sort of observation based on what Katrina was saying in terms of duration. One guideline I will give you, that no matter how wonderfully constructed or great it is, you will not answer a question with 1 sentence. So that's just to give you a guideline as well. So we know you only have half an hour, so we're not expecting you to write a book. So just give it a few lines, paragraphs, or pages or whatever. So it's not a single sentence or a yes, no.
Nabila has just sent in a question here saying, would it be possible to send us all the short tests answers and also the 50 questions mock exam answers? And that's absolutely no problem. I will get that across to you guys. It'll be between now and Monday. I will get that done. I'll send those answers.
Thank you so
across to
much,
No
Catherine.
problem.
Thank you.
No, that'll help. That'll help all of you with
Yeah.
your preparation. No problem at all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll have a look at that, and I'll be getting these video things together as well. So you just keep an eye on my email this afternoon, Katrina. If I have them here, I can include them in the email I'm sending to everybody as well.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. All right, guys. It's 11:01, and we said we go on till 11. So go have a break. I see Paul. No, he arrived and left. So Paul is around. So if you want to go get a quick cup of tea and coffee and be back here at 11:15, and so you're back at 11:15 if you are doing. Where's it gone? 11:15 if you're doing international credit management. That's that. If you're doing law, come back about 5 to 12, or maybe even 10 to 12, just in case it's short. Is that okay? See you later. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Katrina.
Thanks, Katrina.
Bye-bye, guys.
Thanks, Katrina.
Yeah,
and
Thanks,
Katrina.
Katrina.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
Katrina.
I'll talk to you on Monday, I'm sure.
Thank you.
See you guys.